You know, indie games are quite special. It seems like every year we're graced with at least one indie game that stands out from the rest and is heralded as a masterpiece by many. Shovel Knight, Celeste, Cuphead, Hollow Knight, FNAF, you name it. In fact, it's to the point where it's almost tiring to see people immediately jump on the bandwagon every year. Although, to their credit, they're rarely ever wrong about the indie game in question. And in the case of a certain RPG, that statement holds true. Released in 2015 for PC with console ports coming a few years later, Undertale was a phenomenon. For years, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing someone at least talking about it. Say nothing about all the fan art, remixes, fan games, and animations. And while that community isn't as prevalent as it once was, mainly due to everyone having Deltarune on their minds, the game still has a dedicated following today, including me. I have mentioned Undertale a couple times in the past, but I've never truly gone in depth about anything except 2 music tracks. Mainly because I spent a year hyper-focused on Sonic. In any case, I've been wanting to talk about Undertale for some time now, and with this being my 100th video on the channel, there's no better time than now. So get comfy and grab a snack, because I'm about to spend however long it takes to discuss why I love Undertale. Before I get into the game proper, I want to discuss just how I came across this game and what prompted me to play it. A while ago, I was just a normal guy living a normal life, playing games for fun and watching YouTube videos. Then one day, I was watching a countdown for one of my favorite YouTubers, and one entry was about Undertale. I don't remember what the subject was, but I do remember not paying much attention to the game at first. It didn't feel like my kind of game. But then, I started to see way more. Other YouTubers that I frequently watched had something to say about it. That got me interested. I ended up looking up more and more things about the game, and it had me totally enamored. I wanted to play this game, but I didn't know what it is on at the time. This was also during the point in my life where I was still only allowed to play games on Nintendo consoles, and looking back, I'm not entirely sure if my parents would have approved of me playing Undertale back then due to some unnerving aspects. Trust me, we'll get to that. But once I got out on my own, I found out that Undertale was on the Switch, and for fairly cheap too. So while I was at the store one day buying supplies, I snatched up an eShop card, put the information into my Switch when I returned, and played Undertale non-stop for several days. And I loved all of it. Simply watching people talking about it simply wasn't enough to describe just how amazing the game truly is. And it made me feel things more than any other game has before and since. Because of that, this isn't going to be like my other reviews. I'm going to go through the entire game talking about every aspect of it from beginning to end. So without further ado, let's dive into it. From the moment we start the game, we're immediately given a backstory. A long time ago, humans and monsters coexisted in harmony. But one day, for some unknown reason, a war broke out between the two races. In the end, the monsters were defeated, and the humans sealed them underground, seemingly forever. Fast forward to current time, a child is climbing a mountain and discovers a cave with an enormous hole in it. Due to carelessness, they end up tripping and falling down the hole, and end up in the underground. Then we enter the gameplay, presumably as the same child, waking up in a bed of flowers. Our only option is to move right to a doorway. And once we go through... Aww, friendly talking flower! You just know for a fact that this guy's trustworthy. Oh, he's gonna teach you about the mechanics of the game, telling you about your LV, aka love, and how you can increase it via... friendliness pellets? Okay, an RPG with unique mechanics. I'll gladly, oblige. Okay, that's brilliant. Even though we live in an era where most horror games take the cutesy, normally family-friendly character is now a bloodthirsty monster approach, Flowey is still a perfect execution of this trope. Normally, you would consider talking flowers to be friendly and willing to help, which is what Flowey makes himself out to be, but then he flips the script and becomes a maniac. But right as he is about to kill you, we get saved by our first true friendly face. Toriel, aka Goat Mama as the fans call her. She takes us in as her new child, and this is where we enter the first area of the game. Now that the fake out tutorial is out of the way, it's time for the real tutorial with Toriel. I've heard some people give the first part of this some flack because of how handholdy it can be, but I think that's somewhat the point. Toriel is teaching all this to a child, and one of Toriel's character flaws is how overprotective and overzealous she can be. So she guides you through most of it as a maternal figure, teaching you how to solve puzzles through signs and context clues, as well as teaching you the battle system in a more proper way, how to spare enemies you encounter and all that. After a bit, she leaves you with a cell phone so that she can prepare her home for you. Now the rest of the ruins are left to you. From here, the ruins contain several puzzles that are simple enough for most people to learn on their first go-around. To mention one specifically, you may have encountered a sign saying 3 out of 4 gray rocks recommend you push them. And later, after a rock pushing puzzle, you'll come across these 3 rocks. 2 of them will let you push them, but the last one will only move if you ask it to. That's a funny payoff. The NPCs encountered here are mostly docile frogs. They mostly have things to say about certain aspects of the game, like borders and the yellow names that pop up when you can spare an enemy. Speaking of which, there are enemies you can come across in this area. You got the aforementioned frogs, these incredibly sad flies, talking carrots who just want you to eat your vegetables, and these Mike Wazowski wannabes that either hate being bullied or want to be bullied. Weird. Toriel will also periodically call you to ask you about your well-being, and also your preferred type of pie. You know, typical mom stuff. There's also a spider bake sale down here, and if you bought something from it, keep that in mind for later. Though the most unique individual you'll encounter here after Toriel is Nabstablook, who is the biggest mood in the entire game. This whole character is a combination of introverted and laziness to a comical degree. He barely talks at all and can't even be bothered to fight for one of his turns. But if you sweet talk him enough, he'll open up and make a spiffy hat out of his tears. Don't ask questions. There's even an off chance that you'll find him later down a small hole. He'll explain that he fell down it and can't get back up, but then he remembers he's a ghost and that he can fly. I love this character. Anyways, after you make it all the way to Toriel's home, she'll come out surprised to see that you made it. And if you happen to take some damage without healing, she'll heal you up right away, as a loving mother should. Once you enter her home, you'll discover that she's prepared everything for you. Your own room, a curriculum for your education, a butterscotch cinnamon pie regardless of whether you chose one or the other. This woman did work while you were away. Though if you try to go downstairs, she'll insist that you don't, and if you ask her about a way to leave, she'll go down the stairs ahead of you. Following her, she explains that many children have fallen down to the underground, and that she has seen them go and be killed by the king, Asgore. Right now, she can't stand any more children leaving and wishes to destroy the exit. And the only way she will let you leave is if you defeat her. The fight against Toriel is something so bittersweet. She uses her fire magic in serpentine and spread shot formations, all the while you're putting your knowledge of the game to the test. If you choose to fight her and eventually kill her, she will admit defeat, acknowledge you as strong enough, and ask you to be safe before dying. But you can also spare her. At first, she'll be confused as to why you're not fighting, insisting that it's the only way for you to leave. But eventually, the look on your face will dissuade her enough for her to purposely miss her attacks, and then stop, begging you to stay with her. But you can't. You must leave, and Toriel knows it. So she relents and gives you a hug goodbye. So many emotions go into this one fight, and it's even more exemplified by the music. Heartbreak is a simply divine boss theme that captures the perfect tone for the fight at hand. And this is all for the first real boss of the game. After that, you go down a long hallway and encounter Flowey again. Depending on how many enemies you've killed or spared, his dialogue will be different. And if you were to say, kill Toriel, reload your save file, and then spare her, he'll know and mock you for it. But whatever he ends up saying, one thing remains true. He will enforce his mindset of kill or be killed, and let you know he'll be watching you. You leave the ruins, The title finally drops, and you enter the next area. Things have a very different feel now. You feel isolated. The world around you feels like it's ready to pounce on you, and you feel as if something is already making its move. You continue walking until you reach a bridge, and then... Wow, another area opening with a subversion of expectations. Sans' introduction immediately lets us know what his character is. A complete jokester. After that, he then explains he's supposed to be on the lookout for humans, but can't be borrowed to do so. So instead, he offers to help hide you from his brother Papyrus, who actually wants to capture humans. One joke about a conveniently shaped lamp later, and this exchange ensues. That exchange never gets old, and it's not just funny, it's a way to introduce Papyrus and showcase his relationship with Sans, and his character in general. Papyrus is somewhat narcissistic, but has dreams of becoming a Royal Guard member. He also hates Sans' puns, but isn't afraid to make some of his own. Anyways, after that, Sans asks you that you meet Papyrus himself since it would make him really happy. You do so, and Papyrus takes it upon himself to defeat you with a random assortment of puzzles that he made himself. Sadly, these puzzles aren't very favorable towards him. They're either aggressively simple, would work fine if not for Papyrus' interference, or just plain dumb. And yet all of that is in the most lovable way possible. Plus, the more puzzles you engage with, the more Papyrus begins to appreciate you, to the point where he actively shoots down one of his own traps out of it being unfair. While you're doing all this, you'll encounter several enemies, like these snowflake birds that love to crack jokes, this icicle dude that really loves his hat, this one deer that was covered in Christmas decorations by some teens, and also Jerry. You also encounter the Royal Guard members that are all dogs and are more funny than threatening. One of them can only see moving objects and freaks out when you pet it. One of them is extremely hyper and has a neck that stretches beyond the fourth wall. Two of them are a lovey-dovey couple that will not stop pining over one another. And the last one is a tiny dog in a giant-ass suit of armor that just wants some loving and playing. Oh, and Sans is also here to try to sell you some fried snow for outrageous prices, despite there being an ice cream cart right over there and him joking about not having any snow. This character is perfection. At last, we reached the first true settlement in the underground, Snowdon Town. and it's quite lively. Surprisingly, there are a lot of buildings that meet your everyday needs. There's a general store, an inn, a library with a misspelled sign, and a restaurant with a bar. The denizens are also fun. They're all unique monsters and have their own things to say. Some of them are a bit depressed about being trapped in the underground, but others are perfectly happy and make do with their lives. You can even talk to the Royal Guard members you fought, assuming you didn't kill them or anything. But when you inevitably go far enough past the town, you'll end up in a snowstorm and be confronted by Papyrus. At first, he seems to project his own feelings onto you. He's really happy that someone appreciates puzzles and spaghetti as much as him, and that he wants to be your friend. But he knows that he can't. Not if he wants to pursue his dream of being part of the Royal Guard. So he challenges you to a one-on-one fight that will prove him worthy of Royal Guard status. The preamble to this fight is pretty straightforward. Papyrus launches some small attacks that are completely harmless, and your options are to fight him, spare him, or flirt with him? Okay, I'm not judging anyone who chose this because Papyrus is sweet and adorable, but how exactly do you plan on making out with a skeleton? How is that gonna work? Smash. Anyways, once you either make the move to fight him or spare him, he'll launch his blue attack, which is completely harmless if you just don't move at all. This is where the real fight begins. With your soul now blue, it's more akin to a 2D side-scroller than the other fights. You gotta jump over and between every bone attack while also making sure to stay still for the blue bones. All the while, Papyrus is bragging about how great he's going to be once he captures you. Which, by the way, he does if your health gets too low. Yeah, he's the one enemy that doesn't kill you, and it's almost pathetic how easily escapable his cage is. However, over the course of the fights, he begins to regret his actions as he'd be losing someone who wants to be friends with him, but reassures himself that everything will be fine. He even brags about his upcoming special attack, only for it to get stolen by a random dog. So he resorts to an absolutely normal attack that's not normal in the slightest. Yeah, this whole fight is crazy, and the music elevates that feeling further. In fact, it's a remix of Papyrus's regular theme that shows off just how eccentric he is and how great he believes he is. After that, he elects to spare you instead of the normal vice versa. If you kill him either before or after he spares you, he'll lose his head while still lamenting his defeat. But if you spare him, he'll be saddened that he won't be able to join the Royal Guard. You're then given the option to either console him or insult him, and obviously, you console him because you're such a nice person. And if you genuinely insulted him, then you'll be the one to lose your head. He then gives you advice on how to reach King Asgore's castle, as that's the only way to escape the underground, and then runs off to prepare for his date with you, assuming you did flirt with him. If not, it's just a hangout. You can choose to keep going past Snowden, but I always go back to hang out with Papyrus. I mean, who wouldn't? In this hangout, Papyrus shows off his home that's pretty normal and cozy, all things considered, save for the sock with a myriad of notes on it and the comically large sink. He also shows off his room filled with all sorts of human memorabilia. Figures, a car bed, a giant pirate flag, all sorts of stuff. Then there's the infamous dating minigame. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it's bonkers. The whole thing goes from Papyrus reading tips from a dating rule book to Papyrus trying to one-up you with compliments and dating attire. Once you win, he has a bit of a freak out over losing, and depending on whether you flirted with him or not, he'll either tell you to calm down about your friendship or regretfully reject you as he doesn't share the same feelings. But either way, he's happy to be your friend and gives you his phone number, which you can call at any time. And you should, because the dialogue that ensues with him and Sans is hilarious. Speaking of Sans, right before the next area, you can find him at a stand selling food. If you spare Papyrus, that is. In fact, if you talk with him, he'll offer to have lunch with you. And if you say yes, you're in for a treat. Everything's all fine and dandy. Sans is cracking jokes that get the room laughing, and also playing a couple pranks on you. But then, things get a bit more serious. Sans mentions that Papyrus has been listening to a flower lately. A flower that's been filling his head with praises and dreams. Sans makes it seem like he believes someone's pranking him. but the subtext shows that he knows more than he lets on. But then he leaves with another joke, and you're free to move on to the next area, Waterfall. The next area begins somewhat akin to Snowden Forest, only there's no subversion here. As you hide in the reeds, you see Papyrus talking with a monster in a suit of armor. This is Undyne, the captain of the Royal Guard. Papyrus is reporting to her that he failed to capture the human, but he also tries to convince Undyne that the human is worth sparing. But she remains steadfast in her mission. She insists that killing the human is the only way for the monsters to be free. And after Papyrus leaves, it seems like she found you, but backs off thinking she was hearing things. Oh yeah, there's also this dino kid who went with you just to see Undyne. He follows you a couple times, but he won't be important until later. This area holds so much beauty and wonder, like you're spelunking in a beautiful cave. It also contains a hint of dread as you know Undyne's on the hunt for you. You can encounter enemies such as this weird mer horse that can't stop flexing, a weird turtle bath hybrid that can't stop cleaning, and also sponges. There's also this guy. Don't pay him mind. The area is also littered with echo flowers that hold the thoughts and aspirations of several monsters, and murals on the walls that detail the history of the war and how they figured out how to get out. Apparently, 7 human sorcerers sealed the monsters down there with a powerful barrier, and only the combined power of 7 human souls will break it. However, not many humans have fallen down here in a long time, and it would take all the souls of every monster in the underground to equal just 1 human soul. It's quite interesting, and very sad. A couple times you'll encounter Undyne, and she has no chill whatsoever. She will do everything she can to kill you, throwing spear after spear to try to get your soul. But she ends up failing once by a good hiding spot, and another by bad judgment. Eventually, you'll end up in the garbage dump, where all sorts of items from the human world end up, somewhat explaining how Papyrus has so much human stuff. You'll also encounter this possessed dummy that gets mad at you for either ignoring it or trying to hurt it. It fights you while cackling like a madman, but then gets scared off by Napstablook, who you can hang out with afterwards at his house. You just kinda vibe with him, listening to music, failing to eat a ghost sandwich, and laying down on the floor for a bit too long. He also does snail racing in the back. I've never won this game in my life. After that, you got a store that doesn't sell much other than lore tidbits, a small maze, and a hidden town full of little Timmies. They also have a shop that's basically useless outside of paying for the shop owner's college tuition, which will then get you the chance to buy the Temmie armor, the most broken set of armor in the game, and costs just as much. You want this armor? Then you gotta either kill yourself several times to lower the price, or spend several hours grinding until you have enough gold to buy it. Is it worth it? I'll let you decide. Beyond that, you'll enter a dark room, and at the end of it, there will be one last echo flower. And it says... Yeah, that kid's in big trouble. He does come back to try to get himself to hate you, but he fails spectacularly. Then he trips and falls off the bridge, and you have the option to save him or let him fall. If you save him, he defends you from Undyne, but if you let him fall, he resents you for the rest of the game. Afterwards, Undyne confronts you one final time. She clearly doesn't have the time or patience for any more exposition. She's here to do one thing, and one thing only: kill you. Her fight's unique in that she'll give you a shield to block certain attacks, along with pelting you with her spears. It's also unique in the fact that no matter what you do, you can't get her to back down. She'll go on a whole tangent about how she's going to save the monsters and won't be spared by you, meaning your only options are to either kill her, which is quite sad as she continues fighting even in her dying breath, or just run away. If only Papyrus wouldn't call you to arrange a meet and greet in the middle of it. If you do run away, she'll chase you to Hotland and pass out due to the extreme heat. And with a convenient water pitcher nearby, you can kindly rehydrate her. Or leave her for dead. Whatever floats your boat. Oh yeah, and her boss theme is pretty good too. Not one of my favorites, but still heroic and fitting for a character like Undyne. Now you have the option to go back to Undyne's house in Waterfall for that meet and greet. Undyne begrudgingly agrees, if only because of Papyrus, and she's definitely abrasive towards you. In her attempts to be a good house guest, she's a little too hostile in her approaches. But once you get to a point where she calms down, you find that she's not so bad. She lets her guard down and tells you about how she became the captain. And also tells you why Papyrus hasn't become a Royal Guard member, despite working so hard for it. Then things get dialed back to 11 with the cooking sequence. She splatters a bunch of fruit on our counter, destroys a pot of boiling water because we weren't stirring hard enough, and sets her house on fire after turning up the stove too high. I think we're beyond the point of overzealousness. Undyne then tries to be an enemy again, but after all that, she can't bring herself to hurt you. Even though her house is in flames, she's grown to appreciate you. She might not be the best person, but she's willing to see the light in humanity. After that, you escape the burning house, and Undyne races off to Snowden Town with Papyrus, leaving you to move on to the next area. Oh, Hotland. This is the one area everyone seems to at least dislike. Everyone, that is, except me. Let me go through it properly. You enter a dark lab that weirdly has a screen watching your every move. And as you go through, you encounter the scientist in charge of the lab, Alphys. She's awkward, nervous, a total fangirl, and kind of cute in her demeanor. Originally, she was supposed to keep tabs on you in order to stop your progress, but she became a fan of your adventures and wants to help you now. But she also has to deal with her performer-turned-killer robot, Mettaton, who introduces himself a la the Kool-Aid Man. Now all of a sudden, you're in a game show where you either win or die. Thankfully, you have Alphys here to help you out, but Mettaton does catch on to her and decides to humiliate her on television by revealing her secret crush, which turns out to be Undyne. More on that later. After that, Alphys graciously upgrades your current phone with all sorts of handy doodads and offers to guide you through Hotland to the castle. This is the main reason people hate Alphys. After you leave the lab, Alphys has something to say every 5 feet, and most people find it annoying. I, however, find it incredibly funny. I mean, come on, there's a moment where she goes on a rant about a movie she hates and makes a Watch Mojo reference. How can you not crack up at that? Plus, she clearly means well, she's just a little slow on the uptake. In any case, you got enemies like sentient volcanoes that think they're helping when they're really not, tsundere airplanes, question nothing, and candles with legs. Again, question nothing. There are also a bunch of puzzles sprinkled throughout that aren't really that challenging and only stand out due to Alphys' interference. Hotland also features 2 standout mini-bosses, the first of them being this pair of guards. They're fairly easy and not really that special, but if you go pacifist, you find out that one of them is gay for the other. And you even get them together in the end. What is this? Good LGBTQ representation in a video game? Never thought I'd see that, and this game's only been around for 8 years! Well, I feel old. Anyways, the other mini-boss is the ever-memorable Muffet. You can actually come across her earlier and prevent the fight from happening by buying something from her bake sale, but something tells me you won't have the dough. Now this fight is a lot more interesting. It has a unique gameplay mechanic of navigating your soul across spiderweb strings to avoid her attacks, and her little pets. How do you win without killing her? Well, remember that spider bake sale in the ruins? If you happen to still have whatever you bought in your inventory, just use it to heal at some point in the fight. Buffett will recognize it and assume it was theft, but then she'll receive a telegram saying that you donated to their cause, to which she apologizes and lets you go. Now, if you don't have that item by this point, then you just gotta outlast her. She'll eventually get the telegram. I should also mention her boss theme. The motif was used for Napstablook and Mad Dummy earlier, but I think this is the best version of the three, save for a secret boss that I'll talk about later. But the highlights of Hotland are easily the encounters with Mettaton. This guy does everything from a cooking show to a news reporting to a freaking play. And every one of these are laced with some kind of trap, like using a jetpack to try and get an ingredient, trying to deactivate all the bombs in the room, and an actually functioning version of Papyrus's tile puzzle. That last one is almost rigged for you to lose, but I have beaten it a couple times. Whether you beat it or not, Mettaton finds a way to attack you, but Alphys once again helps you out. As a side note, if you call Papyrus after this, he'll have something to say about your performance. That about wraps up Hopland, and next up is the penultimate area of the game. Right as you start out, Sans is waiting right outside the hotel. He'll offer to have dinner with you, and if you accept, you get one of the best scenes in the game. Similarly to the lunch break, things start off fine and dandy with Sans, but then he opens up a bit more, asking if we're really dead set on our goal of leaving, cause if you think about it, the underground ain't all that bad. You got food, water, friends, entertainment. Yeah, some are depressed, but everybody else seems to be living just fine. Then Sans reveals the real reason he didn't capture you at the start. He found this door in the ruins that never opened, and from it, he'd been telling knock-knock jokes to Toriel. He didn't know that's who she was due to never seeing her face, but he still forced a relationship with her. And one day, she asked if a human ever came through, he promised to protect them. And that leads to... one of the most effective scares in the entire game. The way the music cuts out, the change in the font, the way Sans' eyes are now hollow, everything is just perfect. But then he goes back to cracking jokes and leaves. This is exactly what I love about Sans. He seems like a surface level jokester, but there's so much more to him beneath that. I know Sans has been memed to hell and back in the many years Undertale has existed, but we can't forget just how great his character actually is in the game. And we're still not done with him. More on that later. After the dinner, you can explore the hotel for a bit before you enter the actual core. There's not much here other than getting Burger Pants, the guy who sells the food, on a double date with some girls who sell trash in the alleyway, but it's still a cool intermission. Okay, wait, there is one other thing. One of the things the girls sell is a mysterious key, and if you go back to Napstablook's house after buying it, it'll unlock the door to the house next door. Inside is a bunch of diaries, and they have info on a friend of Napstablook's wanting to be a star, and eventually gets his chance to do so thanks to a certain someone building him a robot body for him to use. Have you gotten the hint yet? Going back, the core is a bit of a maze with a riddle to guide you through, and the enemies you encounter are these wizards with orbs, knights that apparently don't get to sleep very often, and at one point, a group of powered-up versions of the enemies from the ruins. Not much else harder than that, so we can easily get to the real star of the show, Mettaton. Right out of the gate, Mettaton reveals that everything he's been doing has been at Alphys' behest. She had this elaborate plan where Mettaton would cause a bunch of trouble for her to help you through. But Mettaton decides that he's had enough of the charade, locks Alphys out of the room, and attacks you for real. At first you can't do much since the original way you got rid of him doesn't work, but thanks to Alphys, you get him to turn around and flip a switch on his back that...
Oh, yes.
Great, we turn him into Michael Jackson. This fight is really unique if you aren't just trying to kill him. The goal is to get the ratings as high as possible by doing certain actions while also blasting Mettaton's heart when it appears. Mettaton will use his legs, bombs, and a disco ball to attack you, making for some hectic attacks. His whole motivation for doing all this is because he wants to be famous in the surface world, as the underground has become boring. And he also sees it as a mercy kill since Asgore will be much more ruthless according to him. It gets to the point where he loses his arms and his legs, but still keeps going out of his desire for fame and pleasing the audience. In fact, this whole fight feels more like a show than an actual fight, which is further showcased through the music. This is weirdly one of 3 tracks in the game that plays slower and at a lower pitch in game than it does in the official soundtrack, but it doesn't matter as this dance to the death is truly to die for. Once the ratings get high enough, Mettaton stops fighting and decides to end his last show with a call from one of his fans. And who should pick up the phone first? But Napstablook, his old friend, talking about how much he enjoys his work. It weirdly seems like Napstablook doesn't remember who Mettaton was, but it still gets to him. Enough to call more people, and the cries of the monsters from the underground are enough to make him want to stay. He's all they have in terms of entertainment, and even though he could be greater on the surface, he has everything he could ever want right here. Then he powers down and Alphys walks with you to the elevator in the castle. But before you enter, she reveals some crucial information. The only way to pass through the barrier is with a human soul and a monster soul, meaning that if we want to leave, we have to kill Asgore. With that, she leaves, and we enter the finale. This last area is so special, not because of its enemies or the amount of NPCs, but because of the story it tells. Every monster you've encountered over the course of the game comes here to tell you just why the king wishes to wage war with humanity. A long time ago, a human fell into the underground. Their name was Kara. The prince Azrael found them and brought them to the castle. Asgore and the current Queen Toriel adopted Kara as one of their own, and for a while, they lived happily with the Dreamers. But then one day, they grew sick. Deadly sick. They died, for at the time no real reason, and their dying wish was to be taken back to the flowers in their village above ground. Azrael, having grown attached to them, agreed. He took their soul, merged with his, and passed through the barrier to Kara's village. But when he got there, the villagers attacked him, thinking he had killed Kara. Even though Azrael had power unlike no other, he did not fight back. Instead, he took every blow, picked up Kara's body, and went home. He died in a field of golden flowers, his body dissolving upon death. In a fit of rage, the king declared war and vowed to avenge his children if it was the last thing he did. Since then, 6 humans have fallen down. You are the 7th. You are the last soul they need to be free. After traveling to the castle, you enter a long corridor, and in the middle stands Sans. He stands there to judge you for your actions. He explains that EXP and love are in fact acronyms. EXP stands for execution points, and love stands for level of violence. When you gain EXP, your love increases. But unlike other RPGs where you gain strength from the slaughter, you aren't actually gaining anything from killing in Undertale. You're just becoming colder to the world around you and holding back less and less. Depending on how many you've killed, Sans' following dialogue can be a multitude of things. But personally, outside of a very specific run, I've never killed anyone on a normal playthrough. I've never gained any love. but I did gain love from my new friends. Whatever you did, what happens next is up to you. You have the chance to free everyone. Or you could just leave with Asgore's soul. Whatever your choice is, as long as you didn't kill Papyrus, Sans is by your side. Finally, we get to meet the king of the underground, Asgore Dreamer, the vicious tyrant that was built up throughout the whole game. And what's he like? A broken man. He doesn't want to fight anymore. He just seems like a chill guy who wants nothing more than to live peacefully. And yet, he acknowledges what he has to do. You then walk with him to the barrier, where he gives you one final chance to prepare. And once you're ready, it begins. This fight can only be won one way. You can try to talk it out all you want, and you can even use the slice of butterscotch cinnamon pie from the ruins if you still have it, but it will only result in Asgore's stats lowering slightly. You have to fight to win. Avoid his familiar but amped up fire attacks and swipes from his trident, and strike without fear. All the while, the music is majestic and somber as this broken king does his duty to free his people. Once you get his health low, Asgore breaks down, so heartbroken over all his actions. He can't bring himself to fight anymore. He just wants to see his children and wife again. He just wants his people to be happy. But now he can't, because he failed. He lets you make the choice to take his life and leave, and you're given the option to either land the final blow or spare with a repaired mercy button. If you do decide to spare him, he becomes happy again. He gleefully goes over everything you and him could do as a found family, only for him to be finished off by Flowey. Your game is seemingly reset. The opening is playing again. But right away, things glitch out. Your save file is broken, and he rears his ugly head. With the human souls in tow, he's become the new god of this world, and decides that his first order of business will be to kill you as many times as he wants. Please don't ask me to describe this well because I physically can't. It's called Photoshop Flowey for a reason. This absolute monstrosity will throw everything it has at you, including the kitchen sink, microwave, and refrigerator. He'll even reload the save file to try to trip you up. In between these manic attacks, you'll have interludes of special attacks that are reminiscent of the weapons you've found throughout the game, and if you can get to the act icon in them, you'll get a chance to heal, which can be essential for dealing with the unhinged monster that is Photoshop Flowey. If you die at any point in this fight, Flowey will simply reload the save file to torture you more. But if you can hold out for long enough to get to the act icon in all 6 of the special attacks, this happens. Now things have calmed down to a somewhat reasonable degree, and you're able to fight back against this eldritch horror. He can still mess you up 9 ways from Sunday, but you got health being thrown at you too. Eventually, when you lower his health enough, Flowey screams in pain. You've won! You've defeated this so-called god! You've... Finally, you have this little bastard dead to rights, and you're given one last choice. You can give him the death he deserves and wants, or you can show mercy even to him. The latter option is the one that most infuriates him. Even when down to his last breath, Flowey still tries to enforce his kill or be killed mindset, trying to anger you enough to make you kill him. But when you continue to refuse, he breaks down. He can't understand how you can spare him despite him being so terrible, to the point where he runs away in tears. Then you simply leave, and are graced with one final scene. Now, this final scene can vary a lot, depending on what you did. I'm not even going to go to them all because there's too much, but depending on your route, things can be hopeful or dour for the people of the underground. Same with the final message from Flowey after the credits. He can say a variety of things, coupled with some continued confusion over you sparing him, but one thing in particular that he says is a way to get a better ending. Reload your old save file and go back to Alphys. Then you'll know what to do. On your way back to the lab, you'll get a phone call from Undyne saying that she needs you to do something for her. And after getting to Snowdin Town via the handy river person, she reveals that she wants you to deliver a letter to Alphys. She won't do it herself because she hates the hot land heat, in case it wasn't obvious during her fight. and also because she's so insecure about what she writes that she constantly rewrites her letters, at least according to Papyrus. You deliver the letter, and Alphys reads it, assuming you wrote it. Then she'll agree to a date that goes just as well as you'd expect before going to her favorite hangout spot, the garbage dump. To each their own, I guess. Anyways, Undyne shows up in her best attire asking if Alphys is nearby. You either lie or tell the truth. We do a roleplay with Alphys that can go any number of ways, and she confesses to Undyne that she likes her while also saying that she lied to her about anime and comic books. Undyne reciprocates her feelings and promises to have Papyrus train her to be stronger. And then immediately freaks out asking if anime is truly real. Word of advice? Say anime is real. You don't want to see her reaction to anime not being real. Afterwards, Papyrus calls you to say that Alphys might need some extra help at the lab. You go there, and a door that was previously closed is now open, with a note in front, saying that the truth of her actions lies behind the door. The door leads to an elevator that promptly crashes, and having thankfully survived, we enter a new area. This is where things delve from fun and fantastical to borderline horror. The environment is dark and dingy. The music is filled with dread, and everything about this place just feels wrong. What's more, there are these freakish abominations down here. They seem to be messed up fusions of other monsters, and if you don't want to kill them, you'll have to use your knowledge of how to pacify all the monsters to get by. So just what is the purpose of this place? Well, through the log entries on the walls, we learned that after the sixth human fell, Asgore had Alphys try to experiment with the souls. Harnessing an extract called Determination, she attempted to eject monster souls with it to see if they could be strong enough to be the last soul they need. She used dead monsters because that's the only way to access a monster's soul, and after many attempts, it seemed like she succeeded. But then they all started to melt into each other, forming those weird creatures dubbed amalgamates. We also learned that one of her earliest experiments involved injecting a golden flower from the king's garden with determination. And that flower was from the same spot where Azrael died. Think that's crazy? Well, it gets crazier. There's also a room filled with tapes recorded from when Azrael and Kara were alive. They reveal that Kara's sickness wasn't random, but in fact poisoning themselves by eating the buttercup flowers, so that Azrael could use their soul to pass through the barrier, find 7 human souls, and free everyone. But as we know, that didn't go to plan. Eventually, you make it through the breakers to power up the elevator. The amalgamates corner you, but Alphys is able to distract them with food. She then informs us with basically everything we figured out ourselves, and reveals that she's been feeling so guilty about it all since it was her actions that did this to them, that she couldn't tell anyone about it. But now that we've helped her to be a better person, she's ready to admit the truth to everyone and deliver the amalgamates back to their loved ones. Heading back to the elevator, we get a phone call from an unknown person who tells us that they'll see us soon. And then we get teleported back to the castle. We head back to Asgore, and it seems like the fight is going to start again. But well, there's a healthy dose of deja vu. It seems Toriel was too worried about us to simply wait in the ruins and rush to the castle to help us. And whoo boy, does she have some words for Asgore. The poor guy was just so happy to see her again, too. After a quick reason you suck speech, all the other major characters show up. Sans, Papyrus, Undyne, Alphys, and even Metaton for a brief minute. They all come together to stop the fighting and take you in as one big family. Until yeah, this little shit is back, and he's dead set on making sure you don't win the game. He'll resort to killing you as many times as it takes before you give up and stop playing. But the other monsters won't have it. Not just the ones currently captured either. Every monster in the underground shows up to cheer you on and provide support. But Flowey takes advantage of this and steals everyone's souls along with the 6 human souls. This is the greatest finale to any game ever. And I say that with no exaggeration. The atmosphere, intense. The attacks, numerous but fair. The visuals, sublime. The music, perfection. All of it deserves every ounce of praise it's ever gotten. But there's something specific that makes the fight even more special. Asriel's motive is no longer to destroy this world. Rather, he just wants his best friend back. He wants to reset everything and play with Kara again. And to do that, he needs to kill you. And yet, this is the one fight where you're so filled with determination that you literally say no to death. Does that remove any difficulty? No, because the game will add an extra turn for Asriel every time you die. And after enough turns, Asriel will attempt to purge you from the timeline forever, but fails, thus prompting him to unleash his true power as an invincible god. In this phase, you are unable to do anything. You can't attack, you can't heal, you can only struggle and dodge. Even when you try to reach your save file, it's to no avail. But maybe, with the little power you have left, you can save something else. You can save everyone else. Now you can reach into the depths of Asriel's soul and find the friends you've made along the way. With some helpful words, you can help them remember who they are and why they fight alongside you. And with the music continuing its perfection, this sequence is made all the greater. But after you free them all, there's still someone else that needs saving. Asriel himself. You reach out to him and call his name, and then the music hits. At first, Asriel doesn't listen. He attacks in anger, still trying to prevail, but he quickly calms down and opens up. His attacks are now deliberately missing, and he begs you to let him win, crying out for his lost siblings, saying how much he misses them, and just isn't ready to say goodbye. All of it results in one last attack that destroys all but the save icon and lowers your health all the way down to the last decimal. But ultimately, he can't win. In his original form, he's a broken wreck. A child that's been through so much, and almost none of it was his fault. He knows you can't forgive him, but I think we all found it in our hearts to do so. He then uses the power of all the souls to destroy the barrier and leaves to await his eventual change back to Flowey. But not before we give him a hug goodbye. What do you mean that's optional? Hugging the goat boy is not optional. That is a mandatory requirement from everyone who plays this game, and the penalty for not doing so is a long, excruciating death. Regardless, you wait to see your friends who happen to have a case of slight amnesia, but don't care because the barrier's gone and they can be free. Before you leave, however, you get to go back through all the areas to talk to everyone, and I mean everyone. Every NPC, even ones that weren't there before, are available to talk to on your journey back. Even the Amalgamates are in Snowden Town with their families. Also, you can call Toriel during this, and for about 15 to 20 rooms, she has something quirky to say, with Sans and the others chiming in. The best reason for doing this, though, is when you make it back to the very beginning, you get to see Azzy again! While he laments not being able to see his mom and dad again, he knows that his situation is unavoidable. But he does share some info about Kara. Turns out, Kara hated humanity, but would never explain why. And when they were fused, Kara wanted to use Asriel to kill the humans. but Azrael wouldn't let them. This, along with something else, leads to a popular belief that Kara might be some kind of evil villain, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Eventually, we're forced to head back to the castle and escape from the underground, and the monsters get to see the surface for the first time. Some funny banter later, all the monsters run off for one reason or another, and Toriel asks if you want to stay with her. I always choose yes, since who wouldn't want to stay with Goat Mama, but if you didn't, I'm not gonna judge. Except I totally will. With that, the credits roll. The monsters are now living their best lives peacefully with the humans. I can't imagine the turmoil that ensued beforehand, but let's not ask questions. Also during the credits, Azzy appears a third time to give us a bullet hell minigame that unlocks something special if you happen to manage to beat it unscathed. What's that? We'll talk about that later. Whatever the case, that is the best and true ending of Undertale. Truly a heartfelt adventure full of laughs, tears, and everything else. And I never get tired of playing through it. But there is something else you can do. Something that could ruin everything. Something that could turn this beautiful, heartfelt adventure into a nightmare. This was something on my first playthrough that I was very hesitant to do, which isn't really typical of me. In fact, I'm not sure I can get through it again. So I won't! But I will.
I think we've made it pretty clear that Undertale is not your normal RPG. But perhaps you ask the question, what happens if I treat it like a normal RPG? What if instead of sparing everyone I meet, or killing everyone I meet, I actively grind for enemies? Eventually, curiosity gets the better of you, and you search the entire ruins for enemies to kill, ruthlessly slaughtering every one of them. Your love gets higher and higher until you ground too much. Those weren't random enemies that endlessly respawned. Those were people that lived in these ruins, and you killed all of them. Except now it's the Blook. Being a ghost comes with the handy perk of being immune to death. Nevertheless, things still continue as they normally would, just with that eerie droning sound in the background. You eventually get to Toriel's fight, and when you attack, it's over instantly. You're just that powerful, and you hate her that much. Afterwards, you meet up with Flowey again, who sees that you're just like him, completely hollow and emotionless. He offers to assist you in any way he can during your mass genocide, and that's the last you see of him, for a while. As you move on, things begin to change more and more. We don't hide from Papyrus, nor do we entertain him with any of his puzzles. We just coldly move on, killing more and more monsters to get stronger, and also Jerry. Eventually, we run out of monsters to slaughter, and Sans warns us that if we keep going the way we are, we're gonna have a bad time. Following that, we reach a barren Snowden town. With the exception of the stupid Dino Kid, everyone is gone, fled in fear of this maniacal human. You can even find a decoy child at the inn. Passing all the way through, you enter the snowstorm once again, and Papyrus attempts to talk some sense into you. He offers to help you be a better person, and opens by sparing you. And when you kill him, he still chooses to believe in you, that you could be a better person if you just try. And yet you continue on to Waterfall to continue your mindless slaughter. With Papyrus dead, nobody talks to Undyne, and things proceed as normal for now. The only interesting thing is, Mad Dummy ends up being cured of his rage due to all the things you've done, for some reason, and it's yet another boss you don't fight, yet kill anyway. Then we get to the bridge. That Dino Kid attempts to confront you about all the monsters you've killed, and your only response is that he's merely an obstacle in the way. You attempt to strike him down, but Undyne gets in the way. Having taken the blow, it seems like she'll die just the same. But no, she finds it in herself to persist, to keep fighting for everyone still alive, to harness determination. This is one of the only actual fights in this route, and it's fantastic. From a gameplay standpoint, it's little more than a beefed up version of Undyne's normal fight, but the music makes it truly special. TS already talked about it in his remake of Top 10 boss themes, and I don't have much else to say about it that he hasn't already. It's a perfect mix of heroic and somber to paint you as the real villain. But in the end, Undyne's efforts aren't enough, and she dies just like the rest. But not before boasting that Alphys would evacuate everyone if something bad happened. And when you get to Hotland, that sure is the case. Mettaton briefly appears to taunt you with the knowledge that Alphys has evacuated everyone and runs off before you can do anything. There are of course stragglers for you to slaughter, but finding them is more of a chore than normal this time. Even the ones that chose to stay, like Muffet and the Gay Guards, are little more than flies buzzing around you. And when you make it to the core, the same thing persists. The hotel is completely empty, and the only monsters left are few in numbers, and even fewer in strength. After you've gorged yourself on the slaughter, the only one left is Mettaton, who stands in your way with a new design dubbed Mettaton Neo. And he does absolutely nothing with it. Moving on from that, we arrive at New Home, where there's no one to tell Asriel's story, other than Flowey, and he has a bit more to tell us. When he became a flower, he couldn't feel any sort of emotion. He couldn't feel any love for his father or his mother, and it drove him mad. He even tried to off himself, but in doing so, discovered that he had the ability to save and reload, just like us. With this new power, he could do whatever he wanted. He could help everyone, he could kill everyone, he could do anything and everything without suffering consequences. But even that wasn't enough for him. He grew bored with the world around him, and didn't know what to do anymore until we showed up. With us by his side, he could finish what he and Kara started, and set the remaining monsters free, and then show them what the world truly is. However, as you get closer to the castle, Flowey starts shaking all over. He realizes that in your quest to kill all the monsters, he's been added to your list. And for the first time in a long time, he feels afraid and retreats. Then you enter the long hallway, where a rather infamous scene plays. I know. This fight has been memed to hell and back, and some people are so tired of hearing about it that they decide to hate its very existence without actually experiencing it themselves. And those people don't know what they're missing. Even in spite of its infamy, this fight is brilliant. Even beyond the twist of Sans being the most powerful monster despite being so lazy, everything in this fight makes it clear that you are not the hero. Hell, you're not even the protagonist anymore. Sans is. From him being able to dodge almost every attack, to being the one who attacks first instead of you, Sans is now in the position of hero. And yet he never wanted to be. You know why he's so lazy all the time? Because he knows about the player's power to save and reload and reset. He knows that everything in his world can be erased and undone in an instant. So to him, there's no point in doing anything at all. Why would there be if everything you do will inevitably be erased? But your genocidal rampage has forced him to take action. In his own words, he can't afford not to care anymore. About halfway through the fight, Sans offers to spare you, to give you one more chance at redemption, to see if there truly is any good in you. If you choose mercy, he'll kill you instantly, leaving one message as you die. If we're really friends, you will come back. But as we know, the only way to win is to keep fighting. After surviving a few turns and making Sans dodge more, he'll start propping up his special attack. And after a bit more turns, this happens. He seemingly got you trapped, but there is a way to win. If you wait until he falls asleep, you can move the box all the way to the fight icon, and... After that, we head to Asgore, who doesn't even recognize you as a human, instead questioning what kind of monster you are. But it doesn't matter as we don't even get a fight menu this time. We just strike him down in a cutscene, and he doesn't even get to process what's happening. Additionally, This is it. Your last chance. Flowey is the last one. It only takes one press of a button to end it, either one way or the other. And if you choose violence, this is the scariest moment in the entire game. You're face to face with Kara, the original fallen child. But they are no child. Not anymore. With your guidance, they become strong. They have become monstrous. They offer one last choice to you, to erase this now hollow world and move on to the next. If you say yes, the world is destroyed. But if you say no, your game is gone. It's just a black void. You can't reload your save, and closing and opening the game doesn't work either. There's just nothing but darkness and wind. But if you wait for 10 minutes, Car will talk to you again, puzzled as to why you're still here. They'll ask if you think you're above consequences, and have some words to say if you think you do. But by saying no, they'll give you an opportunity. They'll restore the game if you hand over your soul. And if you do, it seems like everything is back to normal. You can have your happy ending again. Except you can't. In a post-credits cutscene, Chara takes you over and seemingly ruins your happy ending. Even when you try to make right by your actions, they won't let you forget what you did. Because you just had to go the extra mile. You just had to find out what would happen if you killed enough. And now you're forever paying the price for it. This is their game now. And no matter what you do, you'll never be happy again. Until you hack the game's files on PC or delete the game's internal save data on console.
Well, that was a wild ride, but would you believe me if I said we weren't done yet? No sir, this game has secrets to discover. I will say that I probably don't know all of them since Toby Fox accounted for literally everything when making this game, so I'm just gonna go over the major ones I do know, starting with Sans' secret room. When doing a pacifist route, if you reload your save multiple times and engage with Sans in the hallway, he'll give you the key to his room, alluding to some kind of truth that awaits there. Only for it to be a prank, as it's just as barren as you'd expect. But there is a key hidden in the room that unlocks a special door in the back of Sans' house. Said door leads to a lab filled with secrets galore that remain unsolved to this day. And even though this room is responsible for a rather infamous theory, it's still interesting to think that even after all that's been told up front, Sans has even more stories to tell. Another secret I know of is the Gaster secret. Now, I've never actually encountered this, as you need to edit very specific files on the PC version, but essentially, this Easter egg tells the story of a scientist named W.D. Gaster trapped in a void between space and time, fallen down long ago, and yearns to be set free. It's confirmed that Gaster was Alphys' predecessor, and many theorize that he's also the father to Sans and Papyrus. I personally don't want to believe that theory, as we get next to nothing on who else Gaster is in the world of Undertale, but I will admit there could be hints to some sort of connection to Sans. Regardless, the next secret is the So Sorry secret, which was a fan shitpost that made it into the game. If you find a secret spot in Hotland on October 10th at exactly 8 PM, this monster by the name of So Sorry will appear and accidentally start a fight. This dude's a clumsy fool who causes trouble even when trying to help, and as a result can't stop apologizing for everything. He's also a massive damage sponge if you're doing genocide. He's fine. Next up is the Mad Mew Mew secret. This one's exclusive to the Switch version, where by going into the comically large sink in Santa Papyrus' house, you'll find a strange door with a giant lock on it. After beating Mettaton EX, the lock will be gone, and by moving both control sticks in the opposite directions, you can enter and find a doll of Mew Mew Kissy Cutie, a character from an anime Alphys watched. Said doll turns out to be possessed by the same ghost that possessed Mad Dummy, and apparently he's having trouble fully fusing. So he attacks you in an attempt to get Mad Nut to fuse. The unique gimmick of this fight involves splitting your soul to dodge attacks, and while it is a little awkward at times, it makes the fight that much more unique. Besides that, however, it's not all that special aside from the third remix of Nasta Blue's fight theme. Though, remember how I said Muppet's version was my favorite in the main game? Well, that's still true, but in terms of every version, this one beats it out. In the end, you can finish the fight by either showing Mew Mew some kindness or smashing him into pieces, and he'll even show up in front of Undyne's house for the true pacifist ending. A good secret fight for anyone who has the Switch version. He also appears in the Xbox version behind the poker table in the restaurant, but there's no fight, so boo. At least it's more than what PC players get. Lastly, there's the Toby Fox secret. At some point in the game, you may have come across this door in Snowden Forest that doesn't seem to open no matter what you do. But if you get through the bullet hell credits minigame without touching a single name, the door will finally open. Inside is a crudely put together game dev studio with a dog sleeping in the middle of it. Representative of the game's creator, Toby Fox, resting peacefully after all the hard work he put into it. Guy deserves it, honestly. Also, the room has this funny joke track that replaces the emotional track for the rest of the game once you enter the room. That's pretty funny. Also, there's a secret enemy you can encounter in the same area called Glide. He's just kinda there being vain and really hard to beat. Plus, to access him, you gotta move constantly for 2 whole minutes at least. But hey, it gives you a lot of gold, so that's something. At last, I've said basically everything I want to say about Undertale. If it somehow wasn't obvious to you from the start, I adore this game. It is literal perfection to me, and anything that might be considered problems to others either don't bother me at all, or are nitpicks that have no effect on me. And yes, that includes the whole grinding situation in the genocide route, because that's the whole point of that route. This is a game I can play again and again in its entirety and never get tired of doing so. After my first playthrough, I was obsessed with this game and wanted to see what the community had done in support of it. And while yes, many of the memes are cringe, there's also so many amazing fan projects, remixes, fan games, lyrical covers that help put certain content creators on the map, and so much more. The Undertale community is one I'm so happy to be a part of, and will always cherish fondly. Also, if anyone asks me about Deltarune, I'm not going to say my thoughts on that game until it's fully released, nor am I going to say if it's better than Undertale. Unlike so many other people who went from thinking it was just okay to being head over heels for it the moment Chapter 2 came out. But I will say this, Deltarune has a lot of work to do if it's going to convince me that it's truly better than Undertale. I have faith that Toby Fox will do his absolute best to make sure that Deltarune is the best it can possibly be. It's just that Undertale's impact on me is hard to be surpassed by anything, really. Again, I'm not going to judge it until it's completely done. But I'll say that while I'm optimistic about it being a great game, I doubt it's going to be my new favorite game. Though, with all that said and done, I'd like to take this moment to get a little more personal. Recently, my sister Bethany has been going through some stuff. She's been in this funk and has been going to therapy for quite some time now. My family and I have been trying our hardest to help her, and it seems like she's getting better. But you can never be too sure about these things. So, if you happen to be watching this on its premiere day, I would like to ask that all of you watching wish her a happy birthday. I love you, sis. You mean the world to me. I know it doesn't always seem like it, but I truly love you with all my heart. I hope you have a happy life, and I hope you accept this video as my birthday present to you. In fact, I also want to dedicate this moment to my fans, to all of you who have stuck with me for over 2 years of making videos. Thank you. It truly makes me happy that this many people enjoy my content enough to subscribe and catch every video they can. Sure, in the grand scheme of YouTube, I don't have that many subs, but it still makes every video I make worth it. As for what's next on the channel, September is largely going to be filled with small videos like skits, with one major video that I want to properly dedicate some time to. Right now though, I need to take a minute to focus on my own life and the videos I want to make in October, cause those ones are pretty big. Now if you'll excuse me, I have an underground to save. See you next time, everybody.